What's up, everybody? So I'm gonna do a video, man. I've been getting asked a lot about this, and it's a big thing, and people ask me because they know I've done both, right? It's always the MMA versus boxing question: who's better? What sport is better? This and that. And honestly, man, I really hate the comparison. MMA and boxing are two completely different sports. They just always get compared because they're combat sports, and they both have one thing in common, and that is that you can hit with your fists. Boxing, two weapons. MMA, most guys use two weapons if they're just boxers or whatever. But it's always a silly conversation for me because yes, they both utilize two weapons from both sports. But I'm like, man, you wouldn't compare football and basketball. You run in both. You run the floor in basketball, you run the field in football. But nobody ever compares football and basketball. Yeah, they share a common thing, but nobody ever compares the athletes from football to basketball. And MMA and boxing I see it the same way. Like, you wouldn't compare the two if they didn't share that one common thing, and that is the boxing part of it. But I think this just got really overblown after the Conor and Floyd Mayweather fight. The crossover fights is what makes the controversy or the debate whether this is better or this is better. They're two completely different things, and that's exactly why you see the MMA guys going to boxing, because yes, in MMA you have to have good boxing, MMA boxing, so they think that, okay, I can go from here to boxing, to the sweet science of boxing, and I'll be all right. But that's not the case. You rarely ever see, I won't say never because there's been a few, James Toney is the one that's jumping out to me, that went to fight in the UFC against Randy Couture, and he got submitted in the first round within like 2 minutes. That's why you don't see boxers going to the cage. I mean, shout out to James Toney. He is the only one that's ever been, like, a former world champion of boxing to go to the cage and fight a world champion in Randy Couture. But other than that, you don't see them go over there. It's two different sports. It's a whole other animal. I've done both, so I get a lot of questions of, hey, which one's better or which one's this? They're two different entities, right? I grew up in a boxing gym. Boxing is my first love. It's still my first love to this day. I fought professional as a mixed martial artist, and I fought professional as a Muay Thai fighter. But boxing has always been and will always be my first love because that's what I grew up in. My father started me in boxing. Two of my uncles were boxers. I love boxing. And that's why I cover both on this podcast, because I love both of them. Because I love one since I was a kid, and I actually competed in MMA and Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu in the other. So that's why I cover all of them. But that's why I said when the crossover thing is the one that I think really blurred the lines between the two. When Conor was on top of the world in mixed martial arts and the UFC, and when he went over to fight Floyd, I knew so many people who trained MMA and even at my jiu-jitsu gym who were like, Conor's going to win by knockout. Conor's going to knock him out. And I was just like, I wanted to roll out my Rolodex and be like, I will take every single bet. Who wants to bet? I will take all of you. However much you want, I'll cover it. Because I knew Floyd was going to win. And I knew Floyd was going to win by knockout. You can't go from MMA to fighting arguably one of the best fighters who ever lived in boxing, in Floyd Mayweather Jr., and think that he was going to beat Floyd. Never going to happen. There's boxers whose who have fought their entire lives couldn't beat Floyd Mayweather. You know, let's just see, right off the top of my head, you had Manny Pacquiao, Oscar De La Hoya, Arturo Gatti, Marcos Maidana, Juan Manuel Marquez, R.I.P. the Hitman, Ricky Hatton, Shane Mosley, Zab Judah, Castillo, Corrales, Miguel Cotto, Victor Ortiz, and so many more. That's just off the top of my head. I don't have anything in front of me. I'm just speaking off the top of my head. They were all world champions. All world champions that could not beat Floyd Mayweather. And these guys thought that Conor McGregor, just because he was the champion, two-weight world champion, okay, was going to go to boxing and beat Floyd Money Mayweather in a boxing match. He landed an uppercut. One uppercut. Floyd carried him that entire fight. He could have finished that fight after the second round. He wanted the people to get their money's worth. And he gave them that. But then he stopped them. Floyd never fights like that. Floyd never fought like that. He put the pressure, he put the pace, he was on him. Everybody said Floyd fought like a Mexican. Or everybody was like, oh, Conor made Floyd fight like a Mexican. He fought him like that because he knew he could beat him any time he wanted to, you know? But now that the time has gone on and now all these YouTubers and all these, these fights have gone on where you have guys going over, Anderson Silva, Tyron Woodley, Nate Diaz, all these guys going to boxing, right? Because, and to be honest, this is the reason why they all go to boxing. If you guys are watching this, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the reason why MMA fighters or former MMA fighters, George Masvidal, Jorge Masvidal, all these guys go to boxing. The reason is because it's easier on their body. It's easier. It's easier to go to boxing, just train with two hands, do a strength and conditioning workout, spar, and run. It's easier for them. It's probably a break for them. Because when you have to train for an MMA fight, when I was fighting, most of my injuries came from the grappling and the wrestling. Being on the mat, in the jiu-jitsu mat, wrestling, doing all that, that's where most of my injuries came from. It never came from the striking. It never came from the boxing or the Muay Thai. I think the worst injury I ever had when I was fighting Muay Thai and training for Muay Thai was I rolled an ankle. Maybe a pop rib from eating a knee, but that's it. I've hurt my back, torn a rotator cuff, popped the MCLs, bad hips, sciaticas, all that from grappling, So when these guys get the opportunity to go to boxing, they love it because it's easier on their body. So much easier on their body. Even when my career was going down, I had an opportunity to go do a black tie event to box. But then I ended up getting injured and I couldn't go through with it. But I was really looking forward to that because I'm like, I don't have to wrestle. I don't have to grapple. All I have to do is go train, do my road work, hit the mitts, spar. Like, I was really looking forward to that. Because it would have taken a big toll off my body from having to do all the other stuff, the grappling and all that. That's the hard part of MMA. It's the part that boxing fans don't understand about MMA. You guys see guys on the floor and grappling exchanges. You don't understand how hard that is. When you see guys against the fence, you think they're just holding them. There's a lot that's going on there. A lot that's going on there. Battling for positions, leaning, jockeying for position. There's a lot that's going on right there, but you guys just don't understand it. And that's fine because on the MMA side, guys who watch boxing don't understand why people play defense or hit angles and then cruise around the ring and around the ropes like they're playing defense. They're being smart. It's two different sports. It's two complete different sports. I love both, so I understand. That's why I can call both sports and do it with integrity and love for both sports, because I've done both. You know, most people that watch MMA don't watch boxing. Most people that are boxing purists don't watch MMA. And the ones that do, they're in the middle and they understand a little bit. You know, I'm so grateful that I have a great group of friends that I have in my boxing group chat who are boxing purists, but they also like MMA, and they always ask me questions. Hey, how does it feel like this? Or how is it that weight cut? You know, how bad is that weight cut? Or, you know, what's he doing on the ground? Or, you know, they ask questions. So they want to know. They're knowledgeable. They want to be more knowledgeable about MMA. You know, where MMA, sometimes the guys don't really follow boxing. They don't ask me the same questions because they don't really know. I mean, they just think it's two guys punching each other, but there's so much that's going on in the ring, you know, the feints, the setups, the cutting the angles, you know, bringing guys in, you know, feints. I mean, all these, there's so much that goes into boxing, and that's why it's called the sweet science. And that's why you have to love it and you have to respect it, you know. I love both so much, and I've been in the ring and I've been in the cage, so I understand both. But I just don't understand why people consistently compare the two and be like, well, this guy's better than them, and if this was a real fight, okay, I understand that, right? The heavyweight champion right now, Alexander Usyk. If you put Alexander Usyk in a room with Tom Aspinall and you say, we're going to lock this door and nobody's coming out till one of you is dead, I mean, I think Tom Aspinall walks out easily. And I like Alexander Usyk. I love Alexander Usyk. He's the best heavyweight in the world. Can Tom Aspinall strike? Yes, he can. But he would take Alexander Usyk down and he would strangle him. You know, that was the same question that they asked Dana White a few years back when John Jones was the heavyweight champ. You put John Jones and Tyson Fury in a room, John Jones is walking out. Because it's a real fucking fight. Anything goes. John Jones would drag him to the ground and strangle him. You know, and that's not a knock on boxing. That boxers fight with two hands. It's not saying you're less of a man. You just don't know the disciplines that go into MMA. You know, boxers don't know how to wrestle. Boxers don't know jiu-jitsu. They don't know how to fight submissions. They don't know how to defend takedowns. That's just being honest. But if you put an MMA fighter in a boxing ring, the boxer's going to win all the time. You have two hands. You know? AJ absolutely decimated Francis Ngannou. Ngannou, yes, he dropped Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury didn't train for that fight. He got caught off surprise. He got caught by surprise from that left hook by Francis Ngannou. But he still got up. He managed to find a way to win. Whether you want to say he won or not, that's up to the judges, but he still found a way to win. AJ was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. Knocks him out. Second round. You know? Two different sports. Two different sports. If you put AJ in the cage with Francis Ngannou, AJ doesn't make it out of the first round. Not at all. Not at all. Hell, you could probably put AJ, a heavyweight, in the cage with Khamzat Chimaev, who is the 185-pound champ. Khamzat Chimaev would shoot in on AJ, hit a double, lock his hands, scoop AJ up, put him on his back, drill him into the mat, and strangle him as a 185er to a heavyweight champion right now, or to a former heavyweight champion in AJ. Two different sports, two completely different sports. I just wish that both fan bases would respect the other sport for what it is. You know, boxing fans have to understand there's so many more disciplines going on in MMA. that they won't understand because they're boxing purists. I get it. I understand. You know, grew up in a boxing gym. My first love. My hero growing up as a kid was Julio Cesar Chavez. As a young boy, he was my hero. I wanted to be like Julio Cesar Chavez growing up in the 90s. That was my hero. That was my idol. I get it. But I grew up, started training other disciplines. You know, when I came back from college, I was already 20-something. I went to a boxing gym, and I was too old. You can't start boxing again at 23, 24. That's when I found Muay Thai. Fell in love with Muay Thai. Trained Muay Thai for a year, and then I got offered my first professional MMA fight with no amateur fights. So I went forward and did it. Learned on the job. Record was shit, but I learned on the job. Every fight I got better. Every fight I did different things that got better, you know. But that's just the way it goes. So, and the MMA fans need to understand what it is to watch the sweet science of boxing. It's a beautiful thing, especially when you have two beautiful boxers that are in there who either are very technical or are willing to slug. You know, one fight that jumps off right off the top of my head that I can watch every time and it will bring tears to my eyes because I know how bad those guys fought each other and how much they loved each other. Arturo Gatti versus Mickey Ward, 1 and 2 and 3. Those guys gave a piece of themselves to each other that nobody else could ever understand. That's boxing. To see Morales Barrera go at it 3 times, nobody will ever understand that. To see Israel Vargas and Raul Marquez go at it 4 times. Israel Vasquez just passed away from cancer, I believe. But I think he got the better of the 4 fights. To watch those fights, amazing. Amazing. You know, these guys give a piece of themselves to each other. But that's boxing. And you have that on MMA as well. You know, some of them, they have the trilogies or the 4 fights. You know, Moreno, Figueiredo had the 4 fights. And, you know, Moreno was like, I just want to fight somebody new, you know. And I'm tired of fighting this guy. But you have to respect both. And if you're a fan of MMA, please respect the sweet science of boxing. If you're a fan of boxing, you're a boxing purist, respect what it is to be an MMA fighter or MMA fan. You know, it's 2 different sports. They don't have to always be compared to each other. I mean, I think it was because of the crossover fights is why the comparison started happening. But there's 2 different sports. Just because they carry one thing from each doesn't make them the same. You know, like I said before, you're not going to compare, you know, the basketball players to the football players just because they both run, you know. I just never understood that, you know. And maybe it's because I did both. They understood it's different. And, you know, they're both high-level athletes. You can both be world champion in both sports. And sometimes you'll have crossovers and all that, and that's fine. But most of the guys that are crossing over have already been done for a long time in MMA, had their runs as, you know, as champions, and now they want to go make money in boxing or whatever, and that's fine. I completely have no problem with that. But you're never going to have one guy who's at the top level from boxing fight another guy who's in the top level of MMA, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Because it's always going to be the boxer telling him, come to the ring and fight me. Okay? And the MMA guys will do that. But you're never going to have a top-level guy like Ilia Topuria, who's a 155-pound champion, tell, let's see, Xander Zayas or Boots Ennis or Virgil to go to the octagon. They'd never do it because they know they'd get beat within a minute, 2 minutes. You know, it's 2 different sports, 2 completely different sports. So, once again, being somebody who's done both, has fought in both, loved both, each one is their own lane. So, respect both for what they are. There's no need for comparisons. You know, you don't have to, if you're an MMA diehard, you don't have to badmouth boxing. If you're a boxing purist, you don't have to badmouth MMA and call it, oh, this ain't real fighting, this is not real fighting. You know, I hear it all the time. MMA guys, oh, well, boxers, they're not real fighters because it's not a real fight. You know, it's only two hands. Okay, well, I mean, I get it. In a real fight, a real street fight on the street, I think it's like 75 to 80% of all fights that happen on the street end up on the ground, right? So why wouldn't you want to know the ground? Why wouldn't you want to know how to choke somebody out or take their arm off or do whatever? I get it. You know, and the boxing purists will say, oh, they're just always laying on the ground and that's not real fighting because, you know, just centuries old of two fighters want to just stand up and if they fall down, you let them back up. That's the sport of boxing, but it's not real life. You know, if somebody goes down, I'm finishing them. And everybody can say that. If you're a boxing purist, if you got into a fight in the street and you hit somebody and they were really coming at you and you knock them down, you're finishing them when they hit the ground. You're not going to let them back up. You don't know what they got. You're going to finish them on the floor. So it's two different sports. I just want my MMA guys to respect the sweet science of boxing, and I want my boxing purists to respect the sport of MMA because they're two different things, but they're both beautiful. They're both beautiful to me. I love watching pure boxing. It makes my heart happy. I love watching pure MMA, high-level MMA. It gets me excited, you know, because I was in the cage before too, and I'm always looking how to improve myself, to coach my kids and everything else. Like, I love it. So there's no need to compare the two. They're two different sports, beautiful in their own right. And just leave it at that. You know, you can love one, you can love the other, or you can love both like me. I love both so much. So that's my little breakdown of that. You know, I get this question all the time, and I figured I'd just break it down and put it on the channel for you guys if y'all had any questions. But thanks again for watching, man. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. See you guys on the next one. Peace.